So this woman has a big problem. She'll do anything to gamble online, even murder her own friends. Now, the woman goes by the name Am, and she's around 26 years old, and she lives in Thailand, and Am loves to gamble. She gambles a lot on her phone through those online casinos, and I guess she eventually becomes addicted to it. And she wins a bit, but then she starts losing. And suddenly, like all gambling addicts, she ends up broke. So then one day in 2015, she asks her friend if she can loan her money. And the friend is nice, and she's like, sure, just pay me back whenever you can. And she gives Am $3,000. And of course, immediately, Am goes and gambles it all away. Now, eventually, friend starts asking, hey, when are you going to pay me back that money? Now, at this point, Am could admit that she screwed up and she gambled away all the money she lent her, but that's not what Am does. Instead, she comes up with an insane plan to murder her friend so that she doesn't have to pay her back. First, she gets online and she figures out how to buy cyanide. Then she goes to her friend's apartment and she low-key puts some of it in her food or drink, we actually don't know which. Then, friend unknowingly consumes it and suddenly, boom, she's almost immediately on the floor and within minutes, she's unalived. Then, to be even more awful, Am steals a bunch of her stuff and she flees the scene. Here's the worst part about all of it though. Cyanide is hard to detect in a person's system, and when someone dies, they don't normally do a full autopsy unless they have a reason to, like if they suspect someone was murdered. So in this case, everyone just assumes that friend died tragically of heart failure, which means Am gets away with it, and she keeps on living her life, and then she moves on, and later she meets this guy, Weetoon. And Weetoon is a local police officer, and Am thinks he is fine. And so she and Weetoon start hanging out, and they eventually start dating, and over time, they end up getting married. So not only did Am get away with murdering her friend, she appears to be living a great life now. She's out of debt, and there's no need for her to murder anyone else. Until at some point, Am starts gambling again. And of course, she ends up losing all her money again. So in 2020, once she's broke, she goes to some of her other friends and she asks them if she can borrow some money. And her friends are like, sure. And just like before, over time, these friends eventually start asking Am, when is she gonna pay them back? And so Am gets on the internet and starts ordering more cyanide. And one by one, she goes after each of these friends. And boom, she gets her friend at her house. 4 months later, boom, she gets another friend by giving her a cyanide-laced diet pill. Right after that, she invites another friend to stay with her in a villa, and boom, she poisons her there. Then, a few months after that, she visits a friend's place, and boom, she gets him too. And each time she unalives one of these friends, she steals their cash and any jewelry or handbags, anything she can resell. And then she takes that money and gambles it all away in online casinos. And by this point, she's gambling away sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a day. But it seems to be working for her, so she keeps going. And in 2022, she convinces some more people to lend her money. And then she secretly goes and gambles it away, and when they inevitably ask when she's gonna pay them back, she goes and gets more cyanide and goes after them all one by one. Boom, she poisons a police captain she met through her husband. The very next day, boom, she poisons a friend while shopping for vegetables. Then boom, she poisons another friend at her house. Then boom, she poisons another friend at the market. 2 days after that, boom, she poisons another friend while out for coffee. Now, at this point, Am is getting really confident. She's unalived 10 of her friends, and still no one suspects anything. So this is probably starting to feel like a thrill for her. And then so she strikes again. One day her friend lends her $7,500, and she eventually meets up with Am at a restaurant to get paid back. But while she's there, friend isn't feeling well, so Am offers her some cough medicine. And that cough medicine ends up being laced with cyanide. And so boom, friend collapses right there in the restaurant. And so then Am low-key steals her purse and leaves, while friend is rushed to the hospital. Here's the thing though, friend ends up surviving, but unfortunately she isn't able to connect the dots and figure out that it was Am who poisoned her. She probably just thinks that she collapsed because she wasn't feeling well and that her purse was stolen by some random bystander. Regardless, a few months later, boom, Am strikes again and poisons yet another friend. Now, around this time, Am's husband, the police officer, Weetoon, somehow he actually discovers that she's been poisoning all these friends of hers with cyanide. And he's like, holy shit! Now, being a police officer, he could easily go and turn her in. But that's not what he does. See, Am is kind of making some decent money off this, and no one is suspicious of her. So instead of turning her in, Weetoon decides he's gonna help her out. So a few months later, in 2023, Am's ex-boyfriend asks her to pay him the money back that he had lent to her a long time ago. And Am's like, sure, I'll come over to your place and I'll pay you back. And so she goes over to his house and boom, she poisons him with cyanide. Then she steals a bunch of his cash and jewelry, and Weetoon picks her up afterwards and drives her back home. So like now he's her getaway driver. And it just keeps going, because a month after that, boom, Am poisons another police officer. No idea why. I mean, she's probably just doing it for fun at this point. However, then finally it all starts to go wrong. Because one day, Am invites her relatively new friend Koi on a trip to take part in a Buddhist protection ritual. It's supposed to bring good karma or something. I'm not very familiar with the ritual, but Am invites her to come along, and Koi's like, all right. And so Am and Koi travel to this nearby province, and they buy a bag of live fish to release into the river. That's all part of this ritual. It's supposed to bring good luck. And so they buy the fish, and they walk over to the pier, and as soon as they get there, Am gives Koi something laced with cyanide, and Koi consumes it, and pretty quickly, boom, Koi is out, lying on the ground, unconscious, dying. Then, of course, Am steals her purse, and she flees. Here's the thing, though. Koi's mother finds out that her daughter suddenly died on the pier. And she's like, there is no way my daughter had random heart failure. That's suspicious as fuck. And so she pushes the police to keep investigating and to dig deeper. And so police, they have an autopsy done, and when the results come back, they finally see that there are traces of cyanide in Koi's system. And so police are like, how the hell did she get cyanide in her system? And so, because Am is one of Koi's friends, police bring her in and they question her, and naturally, she denies everything. She denies even being at the pier with Koi. But what her dumbass doesn't know is that they already have security footage from that day of her and Koi walking by the river. There's Am right there, and there's Koi right there with the bag of live fish. And so once police catch Am lying, they know something is up. And so, bam, they arrest her. Here's her mugshot.
The number of victims continues to rise as police arrest a woman arrested of carrying out a spate of cyanide poisonings.
And so in total, she had unalived 14 of her own friends over the course of about 10 years. So anyway, she goes to trial and she's found guilty and she's sentenced to death. I guess Thailand doesn't mess around. While her husband, Weetoon, he gets sentenced to 1 year, 4 months in prison.